Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of A Piece of Ash. This is my monthly show where I take questions from you guys and we talk about kind of whatever you guys want to talk about. Usually wargaming related, tabletop related, just fan stuff. We usually try and keep it right. I work on stuff while we talk, and typically I'm going to be doing some painting. Sometimes I do some assembling. This week I am working on some weird miniatures from Alpha. I have the limited edition Misstep Teddy. All these miniatures I already base coated and washed. And so I'm just in the process of finishing them. I've got Baby Cade, who looks disturbingly like my son. Disturbingly like my son. And I've painted him disturbingly look like my son too. And the Widow Weaver, which is a giant spider dressed like a nanny. These are some minis I've had lying around for a while. Actually, it's not true. The Misstep and the Baby Cade I just got recently in a batch of stuff from Weird, just for henching a bunch of tournaments and stuff. And Baby Cade was actually Dayglow, and I primed him and painted him anyway. I might use the Dayglow stuff, see what I can do with the Dayglow stuff for the ghosts that come in there, the woes and the poltergeist. But for Candy and Cade, I'm just going to paint them up because they wouldn't be Dayglow green. It just looks strange to me. But I might experiment with taking the Dayglow plastic, dull coating it a few times, and then putting some glazes and washes down on it because that'll help it adhere. You can't prime plastic and have it keep its color. Obviously, there's no such thing as clear primer, but you can use dull coat to do that and then see what that looks like maybe when I do some shading on it. So that'll be an experiment, but for another day because I'm not getting the Pandora box ready yet. I'm just pulling kind of the piece out of it that I want for my current masters from Alpha. Some work on these while we talk. So I usually go for about an hour. If you guys want to get in questions, if I miss your questions from this month, these will be questions that happen in March for the April show, which is happening today, you'll have another chance. Just go in and get into the collector. It's a link below in the description, and get your question as quickly as possible because I do answer them in the order they come in. So if you don't get it this month, try again next month. Hopefully I'll get to it quickly. So if you did ask a question late in the month, like the 3rd or 4th week of March, you're probably... there's a good chance it's not going to get answered, and so go get it in fast. Let's just dive right in and I'll start painting. So first question is from a Lonely Brick. He asks, on the internet, you can see minis that never made it into production like Quidditch from Harry Potter. I think that would have been fun. What book or film world would you like to see as tabletop? What book or film? I get asked this question a lot about just genre stuff, and I'm the kind of guy that usually, if there's something that doesn't exist right now in a miniature game, and I think it should be in a miniature game, I'll just find a set of rules that I think would work for it. Like the Fallout stuff that I'm doing, this is not a test. So this is not a test, is a nice generic set of post-apocalyptic, rules. And I've basically converted them to work for Fallout. I'll usually do the same thing. I'll make up rules if I think that there's a genre I want to have. But what book or film world would I like to see as tabletop? That's a toughie. Because so many games out there today are inspired by stuff like that now already. It's really hard to not find something that scratches that itch in some game out there right now. And a lot of the books and films that I really like, they're so bleak that they wouldn't necessarily make a good miniature game because it's already hopeless. You know what I mean? You can't really do a Canonical for Leibowitz, the miniature game. It would be a bunch of monks collecting garbage and thinking it was really important. It wouldn't be very good. If someone out there actually gets that reference, that's going to be amazing. So what book or movie would I be really excited about? That's a genre that hasn't really been tapped into. I honestly don't know. I mean, for most of my favorite things, there is a miniature game already. I'm trying to think of what I'm really into that hasn't been tapped and hasn't been turned into something. Well, see, I grew up in the 80s, and so unfortunately my time of being alive has already been pretty heavily mined for inspiration. I go through the rolls of movies in my head. Anything made by James Cameron pretty much has a tabletop thing for it. Anything made by even Labyrinth. There's guys doing Froud-esque miniatures right now that have miniature games. So it's what do I pick? Well, I don't really know. I really don't know. I'm trying to think of what I'm inspired by, but most of what I'm inspired by, book-wise, it's all more just character interactions, so it's not really about guns and shoot 'em up in a war and stuff. There's been some stuff kind of on my radar that it's either not done yet or I haven't really seen it blow up yet that I thought were cool. Like the whole like modern military against demons thing, that idea from like Doom or Fear, where it's not really a demon, it's like a psychic, crazy psych girl, but whatever. Where there's like kind of supernaturally stuff and then soldiers are taking it on. I thought that was really cool. There's not really there's a couple things right now out there. There was a Kickstarter I saw recently that was all demons against sort of like almost a paranormal MI6. It was out of the UK. I think it funded. I haven't seen anything of it since then. Really, it hasn't really been on my radar since then, but I thought it would be kind of cool. Something, I don't know. There's lots of like, because it's funny because war games, like they're usually defined by their genre, but they're also kind of defined by their genre in the game. You know what I mean? So like there's mass combat games, there's warband games, there's giant robot games. Like it's not just defined sort of like by the fandom thing that it's kind of paying homage to. It's also defined by how the game plays, how many models you play it with, sort of what niche it falls into. And so I'm stuck, man. It's a pretty good age to be alive. If you've got something you like, chances are there's a miniature game out there for it. Although someone challenged me to find a bunch of Thundercats miniatures when I made the outrageous claim on my Facebook page that there's miniatures for everything, and I couldn't do that. So I guess you could do a Thundercats miniature game, or like Mutants and Masterminds, or Mutants in Orbit from Rifts. Like there's a bunch of things you could do that would be weird. Like, although that being said, I just named a whole bunch of things that were made by Palladium and, you know, Robotech. So yeah, I don't know how good that would be. But yeah, let's move on, because I honestly, dude, I'm sorry, Lonely Brick, that's the worst answer ever. But like having now like try to talk my way through it, even I can't think of anything. It's all been pretty mined out. Travis asks, do you pee sitting down or standing up? Is it a matter of comfort? Well, honestly, sometimes I pee sitting down and sometimes I pee standing up. And frankly, it is a matter of comfort. And usually it's a matter of how tired I am and how early my son has woken up in the morning. So if it's 3 a.m., I'm probably sitting down because I'm still half asleep and I don't want to miss. And that's pretty much my answer to that question. Gareth Frenzy Kitty Graham, best Link team in Infinity, boom. Well, that question I could have answered a week ago, but considering that all of the Human Sphere N3 rules just came out and spoiled a whole bunch of things, that question has a bunch of different answers now, because a whole bunch of things just got Link options. So, I mean, there's a lot of easy answers before. Joni and Friends, which you see Owen run a whole bunch, is a pretty great Link. Joni and Hospitallers, but it just got a bunch of options because now it's a core Link team, which means it can be between 2 and 5 models and still be a Link. It used to have to be 4 models to include Joan, so it just got a whole bunch cheaper. It's still gross. Like, to take 4 Hospitallers and Joni is an amazing Link team that gets a whole bunch of work done and comes with a doctor, which is pretty amazing. But there's all kinds of things that Link now that couldn't Link before. My coolest thematic one now, which I think you're going to see a ton of people painting, and I guarantee actually this one you'll see a ton of people painting just because the movie was so popular, and that's going to be Senior Massacre with 4 Jaguars. Because you can have Deadpool lead your Link team now, which is pretty cool. And he didn't get a lot of play before because he's good, but he's not like more impressive than other kind of like solo mission. Like, he's no Oniwaban, you know what I mean? Like, he's cool, but he's not super cool. But now he's just kind of a really skilled, affordable Link leader that has some neat thematic stuff and is a lot of fun to paint. So I think you're going to see a whole bunch of that. Bow Troops. I think with MSV they can Link. Oh my god, Bow Troops linked with the character, gonna be gross. What else? Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of things you can argue are really, really good. Owen's gotten really fond of Konstantinos in a relatively cheap Order Sergeant Link, and that also gets a lot of work done because he's got a visor and he's got a assault pistol as well. So he switches from, he's basically burst 4 when he's at range with MSV, and he's like decent up to 16 inches. And then once you get him into 8 inches, he's burst 5 with +6 to hit. So he's just rocking everything, and he's still got a visor, so he's ignoring all your crazy, you can't see me shenanigans and stuff too, which makes him pretty bananas, and relatively affordable as far as military order stuff goes. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of debate. I think, unfortunately, the timing of that question is exactly the time when, that answer is no longer really as sure, because we don't really know how it's going to shake out as the new releases come out, and things are pretty, in the air, because there's all kinds of things from Human Sphere that can link now that couldn't link before. Gecko's being able to link, and Fireteam Duo. That's pretty freaking cool. Like, having a tag link, I'm pretty excited about that. Being able to give your Father Knights a link. In Military Orders, they have Duo, and if you take an Evo Hacker in Vanilla Pano, you can have linked Father Knights, which is pretty gross too. So it's going to be an interesting year. Andrew from the Buffalo Infinity Gaming Group asks, first off, thanks for all you do for the community via your videos and Q&As and stuff. My two-part question is, what's been your favorite Infinity Mini to paint? And what's your favorite mini to use on the table for Infinity? So, to paint, that's a really good question. There's Infinity Minis that are fun to paint for different reasons. Like, I really enjoy painting all of the Ariadne stuff because it's all so military that I don't really have to change up my scheme too much. Everybody's going to be in generally the same kind of fatigues and stuff. And because I've been doing mostly Kazakhs, I've got like a really efficient way of painting them down. And it looks good too, and I'm happy cranking them out. But at the same time, I really enjoy like painting the one-off like heavy infantry and stuff too, and the tags for Pano. I love painting the Yodam. I painted him in pieces actually, and then put him together afterwards because I airbrushed most of him. And he was a lot of fun to paint. And of course, he's ridiculously fun to play with, but you almost feel bad sometimes playing with him because if you're cautious and you defend him really well, he's just almost invincible. Like, if you put him in cover, unless something's got AP, if it's strength 13 or less, it just can't hurt him. Like, you've got whatchamacallit, you've got combi rifles, and they just bounce off the guy. So yeah, well, I mean, 5% chance of critting always with that guy, but if he's got a pal bot following him around with engineer nearby, then he just basically fills in the holes with whatever spray foam those guys fill in bullet holes with to make them good again. But as far as fun to play with, I love my dog faces, mostly because they're just these great expendable order killers. With the popularity of link teams, one of the things that you kind of had to do if you played a vanilla army was figure out what your counter to links were. And the dog faces are just such an efficient link counter because the links have to be nearby. And the nature of the fact they have twin templates, you can, well, first of all, the link has to all do the same thing or the link breaks. So worst comes to worst, if they want to try and kill the dog, to not just have it sitting there during the active turn and shoot them again, they're either all shooting or some of them are doing nothing, because chances are they're not all facing the same direction. So if they're a 5-man link, it's not a big deal, even a 4-man link, because it all gets what's it called, 6th Sense level 2. In the new rules, actually, you have to be a 5-man link to get 6th Sense level 2. So that's the 4-1. Is it a 4-1? I know that changed somehow. It either went up or went down. I think it actually went up. So it's actually, you have to be a bigger link to benefit from that boost. And it means that, like, they're either going to break the link to do different things, because some guys might just not be able to hurt the guy, or not be facing him or whatever, and either they just eat the templates or they do a different ARO and they dodge or whatever to try and avoid them. And that can force command token expenditure, which is really cool. And then the flip side is the ones you do hit, either because they failed at whatever they're doing, or they don't dodge, because if they shoot you back, it's a normal roll. Like, they're just going to eat 2 impact templates. Then, not impact templates, just direct place templates. Then you're probably just going to kill it. Because damage 13, 2 templates, making 2 rolls, on 2 dice, on average, you wound something. Like, it's hard to spike dice twice, especially if it's a squishy link. If it's a heavy infantry link, armor 3 or 4, it's still 50-50 to take a wound. And on 2 dice, 50-50 becomes really good odds. So you're probably putting down a big chunk of that link, and at worst, you're breaking it. If you get the leader, you're breaking it if they do different AROs. And you're breaking it if you just kill enough of them that they're all dead. So it's a really efficient killer, and it's also really efficient at getting there if you know what to look for. So if your opponent's got viral in his army, you got a big problem. You gotta pick a lane where the viral isn't. If your opponent's smart and he's got viral in his army, that viral whatever becomes a reserve mini, and it hunts down your poor untransformed dogs, because the viral just kills the guy from unconscious to dead. Sorry, he skips unconscious and goes to dead. So you don't get to use your transformation skill and turn into a giant werewolf. But if you don't, everything else that isn't exotic ammo, you just walk through because you have total immunity. So missile launchers, just rolling 1 dice. You ignore shock, you ignore DA, you ignore AP. Not that AP is really much until you're transformed. But you get there usually. The first one they do is actually into your benefit because it speeds you up by 2 inches. And increases the length of your super jump. And after that, you still have 2 wounds of total immunity to try and get into combat. So it can be really, really useful to take at least even just one dog. I always take the max. I take 2. If I wanted to really take the max, I could take Duroc as well and take 3. And if you want to be just silly, ridiculous, gross, you can play Caledonians and take 3 of the, the Cameronians? Yeah, you can take 3 Cameronians plus McMurrow, which is the super dog, and just go all dogs all the time. And yeah, that makes for a pretty silly army because they're pretty efficient at doing what they want to do, and they usually get there to do it too. And if worse comes to worse, if they survive getting there and doing it once, they're standing there in the reactive turn for whenever someone comes after you. So they're a lot of fun to play with because they're unexpected and because they really do make that army super competitive against armies with links in them, because again they're fairly order efficient too, because they all effectively have 2 orders, and that first order you're just using to try and get as close as you can to the enemy anyway. So it means that even though they're 27 points, they're providing 2 orders the order pool that only they can use, but you probably just want them using them 2 orders every single turn. It just forces you to use those orders on those guys. So yeah, short story long, I'd say the most fun to play with is probably the dog faces, and the most fun to paint is probably actually because I paint them to relax my Ariadne, so I really enjoy painting them too. Crownblade asks, hey Ash, have you ever read The Gentleman Bastards? If not, I highly recommend them. No, I haven't. I'll check it out. There's another one I was told to check out too by Owen called The Black Company, which apparently is really good. If you like kind of like that dark sci-fi Joe Abercrombie, Game of Thrones-y kind of stuff. Baldar the Baldarian asks, there's a name I've used in videos before, what do you think about the Cool Mini or Not board game Kickstarters? The models are really nice, not as much hobbying as multi-piece, but they're still good. I think they're all good. Especially if you're getting lots of models, because most of those, the stretch goals are always just like double, triple your models, and they usually go to the stretch goals. So if you like having tons of, sort of like similar looking miniatures that you can use for whatever games. I watched Leland. He painted through all of his Zombicide Black Plague stuff the last couple months. They look pretty nice. And I think that one of the great things about this hobby is, especially if you play lots of indie games like I do, you can just take models from wherever to play with them. And so having board game minis, or especially even extra board game minis that you can swap out and put in different games, is never a bad thing. Now, that being said, it's caveat emptor with Kickstarters in general. I get really nervous when I see Kickstarters that have like huge giveaway stretch goals, because they're the ones that usually don't deliver. They usually deliver a wave or 2, and then just all communication stops and they slow down because they were hoping that the sales of that product, when they got the first wave out, would actually cover the cost of sending rewards to the next wave of backers. And it never does. It just doesn't. Because the problem with Kickstarters is usually the people that were most interested in that product backed it in Kickstarter. So unless you have some kind of a program to get people interested in that product after the Kickstarter is over, just sticking it in retailers and sticking it on a shelf is not going to make it sell. And even more discouraging for the retailer, the people that walk into the store that want to like play the game in the store already have everything, especially everything that's available. Because if they have the whole wave of the Kickstarter stuff, they have the same stuff that's on that shelf in that store, and they're very unlikely to buy anything else. So it discourages even the retailers to want to reorder it, because the people coming in that are playing it and showing it off and that should be like the champions of getting this going in the store never buy anything, typically, because they have everything already. I've seen several games go through that, and it's really unfortunate because I think Kickstarter is a wonderful idea, but you kind of have to plan past Kickstarter even during the Kickstarter. And I think because a lot of these companies are so young and the people in it are inexperienced at this sort of genre of business, they don't really plan for after the Kickstarter, and they just assume that the follow-on sales after they get the models in production are going to cover everything. And there can just be landmines there. There's lots of risk, but that's just the nature of crowdfunding in general. Like, there can just be risk. And so, just be careful, that's all. And Juanlas 55 asks, hey Ash, this first one is tricky. How do you feel about the cloning and China orders of GW miniatures, the actual one and the one that are not around anymore? Sorry for the bad English, and hi from Stalia. So I assume what you mean by cloning is copying miniatures. I talked about this in my last piece of Ash, actually, which was about like people asking about counterfeit models. And my stance is the exact same as I said last month, which is it's something that you have to be mindful of. And sometimes, especially with how sort of like big the aftermarket for miniatures got, you won't even know you're buying counterfeit. And that's what we discussed last month. If you want to go back and watch the previous episode, it should be one up in the playlist. You can hear me talk about sort of the pitfalls of wanting to collect classic miniatures. Because one of them is, you might be buying counterfeits. They didn't make that many limited edition Clan Helmar chieftains for Confrontation in like the early 90s that there's, one every week on somebody's eBay store. But if you don't think about that, if you just see it on eBay and you didn't really suspect that, that thing might not be real, then you might just buy it. And yeah, that's it. So I think, and I talked a little bit too about the whole thing with counterfeiting and what that can do to companies too. So like, for instance, one of them, there's a company right now that's making Rackham miniatures, so old Rackham miniatures. And my understanding is they don't actually legitimately own the molds. They're just copying old Rackham miniatures, or maybe they have some of the molds acquired somehow. And they're producing those miniatures. And my understanding right now is that actually a fairly major miniature company owns the molds and the rights to it, and that their fear that that company is producing them sort of in a counterfeit capacity is keeping them from re-releasing that game. And that makes me really sad, because I love Confrontation. I would love to see that game come back. And actually, for a while now, I've been plotting with a couple of my buddies to do a Confrontation Throwback Thursday, because the game was so interesting and unique. And I'd love to just break out my old models and play a game and show you guys how it works, because it was it was such a fascinating game, and so different from any game that was out at the time too, that I'd love to show it to you guys. But the sad reality is that if something's being counterfeited, it really does, especially for indie games and smaller games, not just GW stuff, it cuts into what those companies can do. So it might be becoming accepted in the mass market, where these bigger companies can kind of absorb the loss in sales, especially on premium products, I guess, like Forge World, because those are being sold in low volume anyway. But you can't really absorb it when you're, a mom and pop company, or you're a company that's trying to relaunch something, especially. And if you legitimately own those things and you're trying to bring them back, you just can't, because someone else can just benefit from all your hard work, which sucks. So it's like any kind of counterfeiting. You have to accept the fact that you are stealing someone's hard work and that they aren't being compensated for it. So put it this way, like let's say somebody took all of my videos off YouTube, they downloaded copies of all my videos, and they made a website and they somehow got a hold of all the videos I haven't released yet. So there's like 30 something videos I haven't released yet. They got a hold of all of those, and they made a website where all those videos were available behind like a paywall for like $1, and you can go watch them. Now, what's my incentive to release those 30 videos? People might already have them, and it's not like I'm being paid for them, but if I had a paywall site, if I could also release those videos all of a sudden, and my paywall site was charging more, like it was charging $10 to get behind the paywall, all of a sudden I have zero incentive to actually release those videos, because someone else has basically already stolen those sales from me. And if I do release them, I might get nothing. So what do? Like, I'm kind of stuck. Whereas, maybe a larger company, if the same thing happened, they would already have enough people behind the paywall that they would just absorb it and it wouldn't matter at all. But to, a small company, it would definitely matter a whole bunch to have their work basically taken and put somewhere. So I don't know. I think it's a personal choice. How you feel about that is a completely personal choice. I can't make ethical statements for someone else and their own sort of like set mores. I'm not, proud enough to think that I can proclaim what's right and wrong to anybody, but it certainly has consequences. And I think that the consequences are that somewhere somebody's hard work gets devalued, and that you have to accept that, or recognize at least, that if you're supporting that, then you're culpable in that too. You're part of keeping that happening, because they will continue to steal as long as someone's continuing to buy. Sean Haynes in the UK asks, if you could meet one character from the Warhammer world in real life, who would it be and what do you say? Oh man, the choices. So many people in the Warhammer world. Well, I mean, and here's the thing is, like, everybody's going to have a different answer to that. Like, I can see every Dark Angel player being like, just ask Lionel Johnson if you betrayed the Emperor or not. Or ask Cypher, who are you and what are you trying to do? Yeah, no, that's a rough one, because like there's so many, like the best part about the Warhammer and Warhammer 40k universe, you said the Warhammer world, so you're actually talking about fantasy, I'm going to assume. The best thing with the Warhammer world and the Warhammer 40k world is they're all written with these gaps in mind where you don't really know what's happening, and you don't really know the whole answer to stuff. So I think that That's one of its most compelling features. And so who would I want to talk to? Well, Archeon's a good one, because I'd want to know why Archeon actually betrayed his Templar roots, because I don't know if you know this, but Archeon was actually Templar Sigmar before he became the Everchosen. He's not born from the Chaos Wastes. He was of the Empire and betrayed his oaths and stuff. And so in a lot of ways, he's kind of a Horus figure, because he has some type of grudge against the Empire and against mankind in general. Who else can I ask? There's obviously Gotrek and Felix. Wanting to know what happened to Gotrek. What is it that made him take his Slayer vow would be a good question. With Felix, why did you hang in there? Like, why did you clearly keep following this clearly insane dwarf for your entire life, like well into your 50s? That's like one of the best parts actually about the final Gotrek and Felix novels, is that they acknowledge the fact that Gotrek and Felix must be not Gotrek, but Felix must be really old at this point. Like, they've had so many adventures, and he is just not a young man anymore. Like, there's no way he can be. You know, in the very beginning, he's this young, impressionable, and adventurous bard, and now he's this old, sort of battle-hardened commander of men that can actually lead troops in battle. And he does too in the books towards the end too, which is kind of awesome. Who else could I ask? So many great questions. You could ask Nagash, why did he do it? Why did he want to be immortal? You could ask who else? Who else is really pivotal? I mean, there are just so many great characters. You know what it was? I would want to ask. Okay, I'd want to ask Lord Croak whether or not the 40k universe is out there. That's what I'd want to ask. I'd want to know if those space slan actually came from outer space, and if so, is the rest of the 40k universe out there waiting? That would be cool. Or I'd want to ask Sigmar if he's a Primarch. Those are both good. Skip the question or skip the name. Ask question, when are you going to invite Clarence in for 8th edition fantasy? Man, I get asked about Clarence so much, and I have to say the same answer every single time. Dude's in Korea until next year. He's in Korea. He goes back. He has yearly deployments out there teaching. And you don't just fly back to Canada from Korea. It's several $1,000s and a couple of days of travel. So he will be back towards the December periods, and we will film all kinds of stuff. But he was so gung-ho for Kings of War the last time we were back. We did some Kings of War. I'm sure towards the fall, he and I will start plotting whatever it is we want to play when he comes in. But Clarence would absolutely be like a show regular for me if he was in Canada, but he's not in Canada. Clarence is not here by choice. Clarence is not here by geography. How about that? And I'm sure we will play some 8th edition fantasy at some point. Scrolloff asks, hey Ash, bourbon or scotch, or was it gin? It's gin. I'm a gin man. I do like a gin and tonic. Gin and grapefruit juice too, fantastic. Yog Swagtoth asks, hey Ash, would you consider it a possibility that GW would bring back our favorite 90s games in line with their new board game format? Thanks for inspiring me to take on new projects. I think that's absolutely going to be happening, because I watched a video with an old coworker of mine named Andre down at the Gamma Trade Show in Las Vegas, talking about he had a mock-up for Blood Bowl, and they were showing the new box set for Blood Bowl. So it is absolutely happening, because we've seen it get demoed at the Gamma Trade Show, and I'm super excited about it. I think it's gonna be really cool. I don't know, I mean, you have to manage your expectations. I said this in a previous video. We live in a world where components are very different than they were in the 90s, right? Getting 15 pounds of cardboard in a box, it can still happen, but I don't know if you'll see cardboard scenery the way that you did for Necromunda, or cardboard scenery the way that you did for Mordheim. I imagine, because it's GW and they never really half-ass anything when it comes to board games, you're going to see whatever it is you're going to see is just going to blow your mind. It'll be awesome, and people are going to lose their minds over it, because it's going to be really pretty, because they don't make unpretty board games. Every board game they've made, whether they've been super sales successful or not, Dreadfleet was the components for Dreadfleet are incredibly pretty. Wonderful game, and one that I should get around to playing, actually, because I have a half-painted copy, but I should finish painting and actually play. Next up. GPN asks, what responsibilities does a friendly local game store have to its customer, and what do the customers have to a friendly local game store? Okay, so take friendly local game store out of it. insert retailer of any products, because friendly local game store, I think there's a weird idea out there on the internet that because something sells game products, there is a different transaction between its customers and them than between them and any other store on earth. So I'm going to say grocery store instead. So what is your grocery store's responsibilities, and what are your responsibilities to your grocery store? Your grocery store's responsibilities are to maintain their stock, that their stock is displayed in an appropriate way, that it's all fresh, that none of it's spoiled, and that they charge prices that are based on what the market currently values that product at. So, they're not trying to charge $25 for a liter of milk just because they can, because that's not MSRP for milk. That's what food is. It's an essential item, and people need to buy it. Are the products in a gaming store essential items? No, they would be more akin to snack foods. So, is the snack food aisle filled with a great diversity of snacks so that different people who enjoy different things, like let's say they enjoy chocolate, or they enjoy sugar snacks, or they enjoy salty snacks, they can go in there and get lots of variety and options? Then yes, I think that's super cool. That's the responsibility of any good retailer. This grocery store should have a diversity of products so that different people who like different things can come in and try it. I don't think that they should just stock the things that the grocery store owner likes, because that's just going to narrow their product range, and it's going to mean that if I can't go there and buy the salty snacks I like, even if my wife likes sugary snacks and all they stock is sugary snacks, I'm probably going to go somewhere else. And then as far as the customer point of view is, the customer goes in and they buy what they want and they leave. But I don't think that you're ever going to have a customer go into a supermarket to go hang out, maybe make use of, their coffee pots, or go into their deli section and use their microwave from time to time to warm up their food they brought in from home. Possibly, take some napkins and plates and stuff to eat the dinner that they bought at the supermarket down the street, and have the grocery store owner feel like that's okay. So I think that if you're going to use those services that store might have, like let's say you want to come and use the bathroom even, you should probably be buying something. You don't want to necessarily go into that bathroom and see a homeless guy just washing himself in the sink, which I've done. I've seen that. I've done that. I haven't been a homeless guy washing myself in the sink. Maybe I have. I'm not homeless, but I may have actually taken some Victorian baths in the sink every now and again in a public bathroom. But I think that the store can have an expectation that people shouldn't do that. Shouldn't come in and loiter probably without buying something. That seems fair to me, and that would be a responsibility of that customer, that if they are going to use facilities, they should support that place financially, because it doesn't do that store any good. That store won't remain there if you don't. I heard a great line on the internet the other day, which I won't repeat, but it was apropos of what we're talking about. Mike Grimshaw asks, I know Mike and I used to work together actually in the Fairview Mall Games Workshop store. Hey Ash, long time no see, and would love to remedy that, but life is so busy, of course. In the meantime, will those sassy branded movement rollers of yours ever be available to public? P.S. Go Clarence. Clarence and Mike and I actually all work together in the same store. So yes, I'd like them to be. The ones you see are samples that were sent to me by Litco when they first got made, and I've been saving them as an idea. The big problem with that stuff is I don't have any kind of e-commerce site. And I don't know how, if I went and got inventory, I don't know how I would go about vending them, right? So if I was to, it's not like Spreadshirt, where Spreadshirt basically you upload designs, and then Spreadshirt will send you a commission. So like all my t-shirts are just designs that either I've made or someone's made. PG Pixel, actually, check him out. He's a wonderful designer. And they basically just handle everything. They actually print the shirts, pack them, ship them. Like you're dealing with Spreadshirt when you buy a Guerrilla Miniature Games t-shirt. And what I get is I get a commission based on the fact they're using my logos and stuff. So that's great for me because I'm not a t-shirt manufacturer. I don't have time to do all that. Like if I was doing that, I would never have time to make videos, period. Because I'd just be filling orders and stuff. And the same would go with these rulers. I don't really have a way, if I did go and order a bunch of stock from them, to handle all of the buying and selling. So what I was thinking about doing is not making them available forever, but doing like a limited run and taking pre-orders and then just ordering however many there are. But I'd have to find a way then to do pre-orders where it would basically, if we didn't get to the level that we need, so like I think I needed to order 155 of those widgets in order for it to be, like that was like their base minimum for an order. And then I have to figure out what the cost of those would be, and then what it would cost to probably ship each one. Because like if people are ordering from Australia, it'll cost like $10 Canadian to ship each one. That's the cheapest airmail rate that you get to Australia, basically. That doesn't take like 20 years to get there. And then I'd need to find a way that I could collect the funds, basically do the big pre-order, but then be able to return it if we didn't get enough orders. Like I don't want to be individually refunding transactions to like, if we only get 80 people that want to order one, back to all those people. So yeah, it needs some more brain power. There's people out there that I know that do this stuff that are smarter than me that can probably figure it out. But what I don't want to have to do is build some kind of an e-commerce site. I don't want to have them available all the time because that's a distraction from making content, unfortunately. And I think it's cooler actually if they're limited edition, because then the people that have one. You know what I mean? Like you've got one, it's a token, it's a memory, and I could do different ones. I could do different ones in the future, like a new logo or a different logo. So you could have like the 2016 one, you have the 2017 one. We could just do them like maybe once a year. So I will be thinking about that. I got to figure out, it's not can I do it? Like Litco will happily make them for us. It's, do I have the capacity to handle it all? And how would the infrastructure work to basically make it happen? Because I'm business minded and that's how I think. And I have to look at every hour of my life basically as return on investment. Robin asks, how does your wife view your hobby, in particular the parts of it that you do at home? Actually, what's great about the parts I do at home, which is basically what I'm doing right now with you guys, is what I do at home. So like the sitting and painting and talking and stuff, it's part of my like unwinding ritual at night. And we usually share that time together while she does something. Like she loves doing crosswords and Sudokus and stuff on the couch. And we both love watching TV, and not just like watching TV, like putting on whatever, but we have programs that we watch together. Like we're really into that, American Crime Story right now, the OJ story, which is pretty cool. We got through House of Cards, the new season. What else? What other shows are we watching right now? American Horror Story we really enjoyed. The last season actually was a big improvement over the last couple seasons. What else? We can basically just put on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia at any time and enjoy it because we're both terrible people and we enjoy watching other terrible people be terrible to each other. And so, yeah, so for her, it's just part of my unwinding thing. I think some people sit down at night and they crack a beer, they have a glass of wine with their wives, and they talk about their day. We usually put on some TV show that we're enjoying, or series we're enjoying watching, or a movie. We usually try and catch up on all the movies that are going to be in the Oscars too, before the Oscars actually air. So like that kind of stuff. And we'll talk about our days, and I'll sit and paint, and it's my version of, a relaxive meditative thing, which is what every hobby should be. Like a hobby by nature is a meditative activity that occupies the forebrain so that the hindbrain can decompress, which is the dictionary definition. Well, actually not the dictionary definition, it's more the psychological definition of it. Yeah, so she likes it because, I mean, other people and husbands could be spending their money going to the bar or going to the Rippers or, like on things that are a little less, I don't know. I mean, this is pretty compulsive, but it's at least, it's safe. You know what I mean? It's not dangerous. It's not hurting anybody. It's skill-based. My kids love watching me do it. And they love trying to understand what I'm doing too, which I think is great because it means their brains are chewing over all this stuff. And so I think she's really supportive of it. I mean, we met actually at Games Workshop. She was a really good friend of one of my staff in the Toronto Eaton Center store. And that was how we first met. And so she's known about games. Like, there was no way she didn't know about Games Workshop from day one. And the fact that I played with Toy Soldiers from day one. So I'm pretty happy that way. And pretty lucky that way too, because it's just been part of our relationship in life. Chief Tugboat asks, are you a fan of any board games? I just got Zombicide Black Plate and I'm loving it. Thanks. I do love board games. My wife and I actually play. It's funny because a lot of what my wife and I play together is board games because we both love board games. But a lot of the board games we've been playing recently have been ported to iPad. So what's really cool about that is you get these board games that would normally take like an hour to set up and an hour to tear down. And you can play a game in like 25 minutes and have it reset in 10 seconds. So we'll play like multiple games of Ticket to Ride tonight on our iPads, just with them like linked over Bluetooth or whatever. And yeah, and just sit there on the couch. And we'll be playing Ticket to Ride while we're watching TV or while we're watching a movie or something like that. Because it's just a wonderful, it's an awesome thing to do together. And actually we even play it with friends. We'll have friends over for dinner or have a barbecue in the summer or whatever. And then put it on Pass Play and just have the iPad like floating around the table where everyone's basically playing Ticket to Ride together, because it's way easier to clean up when you're done. If you ever play Ticket to Ride, there's a lot of trains to put away when you're finished and cards floating around. Same with like all those games, Catan, Carcassonne. I love all those Euro like map building games. It must be something in my DNA where I just really enjoy creating something while I play a game. So those games, like especially Carcassonne, where you're literally building like a little tiny city, that's, I don't know, I find them really compelling and enjoyable. So yeah, I would definitely check those out. They're all relatively old at this point. Like Carcassonne's been around forever, like 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. And Ticket to Ride obviously has been game of the year forever. Like they're so popular now that they've basically become my generation's Monopoly, right? Where Monopoly came out, and it was probably like the 1920s or 1950s or something like that, and it just took like the world by storm. That's what these, Euro games did, and now they're in every Barnes & Noble, and they're in every Chapters Indigo or whatever your Kohl's, whatever your country's big bookseller is. You can buy them there now, and they're so commonplace that you see them, even in Walmart. So yeah, I think that's probably some of my favorites. The more convoluted ones, like Owen loves games like Twilight Imperium, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't, it's too much. It's too much set up and tear down. I've never seen a group of people actually get through Twilight. Well, sorry. I have friends who've claimed to have gotten through Twilight Imperium. Owen claims to have played through it like 4 or 5 times. I'm just like, no. It ends friendships too fast. There's no way anybody gets through that game. It would be over before it started with me. I can't do it. It's just too much, too convoluted. Up next. Come on, button. Do your buttoning. There we go. Big Kahuna Burger asks, do you have any friendly local game store horror stories or horror stories from your GW? P.S. What does Marcellus Wallace look like? Oh, say that again. I knew the Big Kahuna Burger. There was going to be something Pulp Fiction in that. As soon as you said it. I made a meme the other day. Oh, it was when... I'm going to completely ignore your question for a second, Big Kahuna Burger. It was when Frostgrave won Game of the Year on Beast of War, and someone was like... What was it? I said an awesome thing for like casual gaming, and someone commented like just like dismissive of casual gaming, and I just put up a picture of Samuel Jackson that said, "Say competitive meta again. I dare you." That was one of my prouder meme creating moments. I hadn't created a meme before, and I thought that was super cool. And then of course no one's ever shared that meme again, so it doesn't really matter. But do you have any friendly local game horror stories or horror stories when you worked at GW? Yes, I do. I have many. And unfortunately, most of the GW ones I'm gonna save to protect the names of the innocent and not air on the internet. But I can share probably some friendly local game store ones. I remember watching a demo game happening in friendly local game store, and there was a little kid. And this is so gross. Why am I even telling this story? So there's a little kid, and he's really, really excited. He's like super duper excited about like the game he's playing. He's playing 40K or something like that. This is back in 3rd edition when it was Dark Eldar fighting Space Marines. And he got so excited that like, I think the staff member giving him the demo was just doing a really good job of just like hyping up like how well he was doing. And when you're really good at giving a demo, it's telling a story, and the story was leading to this like big epic finale. And he just like got him yelling and like screaming and being super happy when he was done. And as soon as he finished playing, I could smell something in the store, and I'm like, okay, well, whatever, I can smell something. Maybe the kid, tooted or something like that. But then as the kid was walking out, he was kind of doing like the cowboy walk, like the wide-legged walk. And a poop fell out of his pants, like down like the cuff of his pants, and just like rolled across the floor of the shop. And I was just like, oh my God, we have to tell his parents that this has just happened, but I can't do it because I don't work here. And so I kind of casually went and grabbed the store and was like, that kid just kind of dropped a poo in your store. And that's just the hazards of working at game stores when kids get really excited and they kind of poop their pants. So there's one of my horror stories. It's not really a horror story. I mean, it's kind of fun and adorable at the same time, and also gross, but most good stories are. The Church of What's Happening Now asks, do you listen to any podcasts, and what's your favorite? I actually don't. I don't listen to any podcasts. I have tons of friends who listen to podcasts. I just never got into listening to podcasts. The only podcast I've literally ever listened to is Aisha Tyler, who plays Lana Kane on... Archer has a podcast called Girl on Guy, and I only listened to the podcast because Neil Fallon from Clutch was on it, and I wanted to know what Neil Fallon from Clutch and Aisha Taylor would talk about. And I think it was like after a show, she like came onto their tour bus and recorded like an episode of her podcast. And it was hilarious. Like, it was funny. It was a great interview. But I just don't listen to podcasts. I think a lot of people listen to podcasts, again, and this is about my whole theory of like the hobby and the internet, because they don't have a lot of social interaction with their interest during their sort of like working day, you know what I mean? So it's great to talk to people about it at night. So if you've got like an interest you're into, and it could be anything, it doesn't have to be about miniature wargaming, it could be about kite surfing or, you know, racing cars or whatever. Like, that's, listening to those podcasts give you that same sort of feeling of connection to that community, that you get to like going to forums and, you know, watching this video, hopefully. Like, it's the same sort of thing. But I'm so, I think, neck deep in the hobby, I'm like too busy doing it to miss it. So podcasts just don't really do anything for me. Like, I don't listen to them because I guess I don't have that void, that need to like know or whatever. If I'm gonna put something on the background when I'm doing like painting and stuff like that, it's usually with my wife there, so it's usually gonna be a TV show or something. So like, even my painting time, I'm not missing the hobby because I'm currently doing the hobby. So I don't know. Sorry, dude. I wish I could give you some recommendations, but I literally don't listen. I've listened to one in my life, and that's it. National Sarcasm Society asks, any tips on sculpting with green stuff? Keep up the hard work. I have a couple. One of the things with green stuff is that it's extremely adhesive. And so there are a couple of tricks. If you're going to try and keep it from sticking to your fingers, run your hands through your hair. Hopefully your hair is not super greasy, but any of the natural oils in your hair will coat your hands and keep you from sticking to the green stuff too much. So if you're trying to just get it to adhere to a model real fast, it's going to stick to the model more than it's going to stick to you. And the other bit is, if you're using a traditional sculpting tool, which is actually usually a metal dental implement, what you want to do is have a little tube of chapstick. So that stuff that you use to protect your lips from like windburn and stuff like that. And you want to put it in the web of your hand right here. So that's a trick that sculptors use. Put a little bit of chapstick right there. And if they're using a metal tool or even a wooden tool, because a lot of them make their own sculpting tools. I think every sculptor I've ever seen that sculpts professionally, his like little sculpting area has like 1,000 million little swizzle sticks that he's or old pencils even that he's carved into whatever shape it is, and some of them are like jealously guarded because it's like their Excalibur. They've made this perfect sculpting implement that no one else has. But the reason they'll make them out of wood is because the wood's porous. It will hold the oil or even water to keep it from sticking to traditional putties. And yeah, and if you've got it in the web of your hand right there, you can quickly, while you're sculpting, you can put your sculpting tool in it and basically just recoat it with whatever the slight lubrication of chapstick is, to keep it from sticking to whatever you're sculpting. And that's my little tip for sculpting green stuff. That, and of course, you can use UV to harden it. So if you need to harden it quickly to go back and work it again, just get yourself a UV bulb and a lamp. And don't put it too close because those things can get hot, but the UV will rapidly increase the curing time in two-part epoxies. Gekillian asks, you've said a few times that you tend not to have a favorite game. However, which game have you really not clicked with? If I'm super honest right now, games I haven't clicked with, I didn't click with Team Yankee that much. And I think that's not to do with the game, as to do with the fact that what's out for right now is really limited. And I think I felt like every game I was going to play was going to be really similar because there was only really 2 armies out and not a lot of stuff for each army. And it felt a bit constrained. But I'm sure when I come back to it and there's like a ton more stuff out by Battlefront, I'll feel differently because I'll have options again. I won't feel like my NATO army is exactly the same as everyone else's NATO army, because right now it would be, right? Like, I'd have M113 infantry, I'd have Abrams tanks, and that'd really be it. Because that's a big part of miniature wargaming to me, is you want to make your stuff yours, right? So when you can't do that, I feel like that limits my interest level, because I'm not going to connect with it, because I'm not going to be able to make it unique. You know, it won't be Ash's version of this stuff, and that's how I end up feeling connected to stuff. So right now, that'd be the only one I can think of that I haven't super clicked with. And I don't think that's to do with the game. I think that's just to do with the current place it is in its life cycle. And so I'm not dismissing it. I'm just saying I'm going to come back to it later when it's a little bit further on. Wandervogel asks, now there's been a Blood Raven model in the Deathwatch Overkill game, do you think there'll be more, and what's your take on the Blood Ravens? Well, I like my Blood Ravens. They're one of my keeper armies, which is armies that I plan on not ever getting rid of, because they kind of form a place in the history of my hobby. And they are Thousand Suns. Like, if you've read all of the Short fiction for the Horus Heresy, you just know now that there are Thousand Suns, that there are a couple companies of Thousand Suns that come back to Prospero, and they think they're being hunted by Space Wolves, and they're actually being hunted by Karn and a bunch of World Eaters, and they go into hiding basically after the war. So they're still loyal Thousand Suns, which explains all their armor coloration, explains the fact that the Corvidae is their symbol because it's one of the houses or the chapters or whatever of the sort of the prophetic Thousand Suns, the different schools there are of Thousand Suns in the Legion. And yeah, that's my take on, and they're super cool. I don't think they'll do any more. I don't think they'll do lots. I think they'll just keep doing an odd Blood Raven model here and then, because unless they do a whole new Dawn of War video game, I could see them doing new Blood Ravens, like an actual like big bunch of Blood Ravens. But I think that's just something that's in their back pocket if they ever decide they want to do that. They don't need to do it right now. There's no reason. There's no real reason to do a whole bunch of Blood Ravens. But doing one now and again kind of keeps the pilot light of interest list and keeps people excited about them. The Bowery Boys ask, do you ever find it hard to remember all the different rules for the games you play? No, I don't find it hard to remember the rules for the games that I play. I find it hard to remember what version of the rules of the game I'm playing usually. And that, I think, is to do with how long I've been playing some of these games, right? So when games are in their, 8th or 9th or 10th edition, you tend to get to the point where you make logic leaps, especially if a game has, through its editions, gone back and forth on something. It handled it this way, then it tried a new way, then it went back to the old way. You can get really muddled in where you're at in time as far as how a rule is handled. And when you make a logic leap, almost always your logic leap is wrong. You'll see me that in a million different miniature games where I assume something works away, and it's either because it worked that way in a previous edition, or it's because it worked. It's worked that way 3 editions ago, or it's even gone back to working a new way, or it's just completely changed. And that's usually where I get the most lost, is knowing when I'm playing, not what I'm playing. I'm pretty good at shifting gears between games. Like, I can compartmentalize different game rules in my head. And even if I don't play a game for a long time, I'll be able to usually get it back within like a turn or two. But let me tell you, playing as many years of games as I have can really start to get to your brain, especially when you get into the groove, especially if you played it a long time ago. So like, if it's a game I'm just getting back into, but I played it a ton before, it can be way harder to slip into the new edition than the previous edition, because you have all these conceptions like rock solid of how it was played in the past, and it can be really challenging to kind of like reformat your computer, if you will, and install the new version. You'll be playing the old version of whatever that game is in your head for a long time. And so, yeah, for me, that's it. It's not about how many games I play. It's about the number of times I've learned the same game. Jas25 Ace asks, Jas25 Ace? There's got to be like a bumper stumper's way of pronouncing that I'm just not getting. Hello, Ash, love your work. What rulebooks would you need to play Horus Heresy Warhammer 30k? You just need your 40k rulebook, and then you can either go and buy all of the hardbound black leather books that give you the story and then kind of bits of army list at a time, or you can buy these new hardcover red ones. So the Crusade Legions army list, the Age of Darkness, the Mechanicus Tagmata book, and now the Age of Darkness Legions book. I think there's 4 of them out now, and those will give you everything you need. So those 4 books will give you all the army lists for every army, all their war gear, vehicles, everything you need to play the game. So if you just get those 4 little condensed books, or you just even get the one for the army you like. Like if you like to do Space Marines, you want to do Horus Heresy, just get the Crusade army lists and the Age of Darkness Legions book, and you're good. You have everything. You have everything you need to play. The Best Stripper asks, the best stripper, what do you use to strip paint off models? I'm having a hard time getting through old primer. Old primer can be funny because primer can have a different composition than the paint on top of it. So if a primer is like acetone based as opposed to alcohol based, or it's an enamel even, things that might work to strip the paint off might not work to strip off the actual primer. So very often when I strip really old miniatures, like if someone gives me a bunch of like Road Trader models and I try and strip them to get the paint off and paint them again, I'll find that I can't get the primer off. And that's because someone's gone and used, at the time, because there might not have even been GW primer then, some kind of hardware store primer on the miniature that is just like crazy hard to get off because it's an enamel or because it's for car body fill, or like you don't even know where it came from or what it was, but it's certainly not coming off by putting Simple Green on it. I use the purple Simple Green now because it's non-toxic and it gets off darn near everything. So it's been great. I have no complaints about it. It doesn't smell terrible. It doesn't stink up the co-op. Owen's used it to a bunch of models too, and it's worked fantastic. You leave that stuff in there for 3-4 days, works just as well. It protects it. The reason we use it is because plastics can strip and metals can strip, and you're not worried about damaging the plastic. It won't hurt the plastic at all. Just pull the acrylic off. So if they're relatively modern, you should be fine. If they're old though, man, and they've got some kind of weird, crazy primer on them, it just might not matter. But if they're metal, you should be okay. If they're plastic, Simple Green's really your best bet. Brake fluid works really well, but it is toxic like crazy, so be really careful with it. It'll burn the hell out of your hands. And so yeah, it's kind of buyer beware. And if it's metal, you can throw it in just about anything. You can throw it in an actual paint stripper and it'll be fine. But if it's plastic, your models will blow up like those dinosaur toys that we got when we were kids that you put in water and they would expand. That's what a Space Marine will turn into. I know, because when I was a kid, my dad did that to one of my Space Marines and I almost murdered him. It's like, why are you doing this? And it turned enormous and I was very upset because all of my hard-earned money got turned into an inflatable dinosaur. Nicholas Ekstrom asks, hey buddy, how do you feel about 9th Age is trying to maintain with the Warhammer Fantasy Battle Heritage? How tall are you? Is Sleep Dragonaut the best song ever? That's a hard one to say. Sleep Dragonaut is pretty good. Stay beardy. So that's 3 questions, which means you don't get asked a question for the 3 months. How do I feel about what 9th Age is doing? It's super cool. I think it's a lot of really passionate people putting a lot of hard work in. I've said this a couple times now. I can't really film it until it stabilizes for a period that I know, and then I can film it basically up to that period. So like, because of the way my film schedule works, because I have to film stuff like usually at least a month in advance, if the rules change and my content becomes dated, that's a problem. And the last 2 bits of 9th Age stuff that I've put out, I held on to for a really long time because almost like a week after we filmed it, the rules changed and I got really frustrated. But then people kept asking me if I was going to do more 9th Age stuff, and I just decided to put it out because it's still just as good content. It's just that those rules aren't going to be current. I just put a big caveat on it and said, hey, here it is. I'm sorry it's not current. I'll get back to 9th Age when the rules stabilize. And since then, actually a bunch of the designers and stuff have gotten in touch with me and said like, yeah, don't worry. It's going to be stable really soon. And yeah, we're excited to see what you do then. And so that's where it is. But I think it's great. I think it's a lot of fun. Owen and I played the hell out of it before Christmas because it felt like we were just getting a new edition of Fantasy. So the other thing is too, whenever I start playing a new game, I want to make a new army for it. But if the rules keep changing, I can't, right? I can't write a new army and go and collect a bunch of miniatures and paint them if it's not going to be valid, right? Like if the units are going to change and their abilities are going to change. Because with Warhammer Fantasy, when you make a regiment, man, you're committing to something. Like it's a lot of miniatures. And you have to know that it's going to do the thing you want it to do for at least a fairly reasonable given amount of time. Because it could be that while I'm painting the army, the rules change again and everything I painted becomes not what I would take in the game. And Fantasy is the kind of game where, your choices are pretty important in what you take. How tall am I? I'm 6'1", so 6 foot 1 inch. I'm 186 centimeters. And yes, Sleep is a great song. I don't know if it's the best song ever. I don't know. As far as like crunchy kind of doom metal goes, I'm a big like Electric Wizard fan too. And you can't count out Clutch because some of their early stuff is very crunchy. All right. Next up, Caledonian asks, yo, Ashatronics, do you have any plans to do paint tutorials at all? Your music awesome, and also there's an airbrush. And also, is there an airbrush that you would suggest? Cheers. The answer is still no. This is the closest you guys are going to get to sitting painting with me because, as you heard me answer earlier, painting is one of the things I do to relax my wife. And if I was to turn it into more work, that would be completely counterproductive to what I do with painting right now. Like it just wouldn't. It would suck. It would take away basically one of the last things that I do in this hobby to kind of relax. And so the answer is just going to be no. Also, there are people out there that do painting tutorials way better than I do. Like there are super talented people that you can go and watch, like Mike from Updeck Studios, part of the co-op. He makes great painting tutorials. There's those, what are they called? Painting Buddha. Those dudes are really good. My buddy Dave Taylor is doing some awesome tutorials right now on masking and airbrushing and painting really big models because he's just finished his Warlord Titan build. So I would highly recommend watching those. His YouTube channel is actually just getting started, and there's some really cool tips and tricks on there for how to do that stuff that he has you follow along with. So it's, if it wasn't already such a filled up void, I'd consider it, but like, I don't offer anything new. Like, and I can't teach you how to paint fast. Painting fast is one of those things that you learn how to do by painting a lot. It's by being confident in your color choices, knowing how things are going to turn out when you start, and having a plan even before you prime the miniature on how it's going to look when you're finished. And that just comes with time and experience. There is nothing I can do in a video that's going to make anyone a fast painter. The thing that'll make you a fast and confident painter is just painting a whole bunch. So like, I just finished Teddy. He's done. He's gonna sit over here. I'm gonna start painting Baby Cade. But like, I can't teach you to do that, right? To just kind of get into a groove and start painting. And well, I didn't finish them. Actually, I'm gonna do all three of their bases at the same time because they're all the same base. That's a thing that could speed up your painting. Done. Nailed it. Etrigon asks, hey Ash, has your wife ever considered joining you in your hobbies, or is she in the past? In that same vein, are you excited to share this aspect of your life with your kids? I get asked that a lot, actually. Will my kids be hobbyists? Will my kids be hobbyists? I don't know if they want to be or not. I know my daughter's fascinated with building things. I don't know if that means she's going to be an architect or like miniatures or whatever. And my answer to this the last time it was kind of asked, it was asked kind of a different way, is I'm going to let my kids decide what they like. I'm not going to try and force my hobby on anybody. If my kids want to try my hobby out, I will absolutely encourage them to try it and give them all the help they want to try and do it. But a long time ago, having been in this industry as long as I have been, I learned that people either are into this or they're not. You either have this weird sort of obsession with creating things from your imagination and making them real and having them enact little battle scenes, or even, it doesn't have to be battle scenes. Even people make beautiful mecha miniatures for no other reason than to stick them on a shelf and look at them. You're either obsessed with that or you're not. And so I'm not going to force my kids to like something. It'll be the same with my other hobbies, like backpacking and skateboarding and whatever. Like, they're not going to have to try anything that I do. They're probably going to ask to try things that I do because they're going to be exposed to it and they're going to see me doing it. But I'm not going to be disappointed if they don't, because I want to be the kind of parent that's excited to find out what it is they're excited about, right? Like, if you try and force something on your children, they might like it, but they also might hate you for it. So I think it's much more exciting for me personally as a parent to discover what my kids are into than to hope or try and encourage them to be into the things that I like. And with my wife, we've never had this in common. We like other things together. So like, we love film, we love travel, we love like literature. Like there's all these other things that we share. She just recently started buying comic books, and she only started buying comic books because Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote Fight Club and a bunch of books, is her favorite author, and he started doing Fight Club 2 as a comic book. And so like, one of the greatest moments of my marriage was when I taught my wife how to open a file at a comic book store. Now, I'm a guy who hasn't had a file at a comic book store probably since he was, like 13 or 14. Like, I haven't collected physical comics in a bajillion years, but I had collected physical comics. And I know enough about collecting comics to know that when your wife says, hey, can we go down to the comic book store and open a file? You say yes. And so, yeah, so we don't share this in common. She loves that I love doing this, and we do paint together. She's an artist, but we don't paint this. And I painted canvas and stuff. I went to school for art, so it's not uncommon that we'll do that kind of stuff together. In fact, for all of our daughter's birthdays, we've collaborated on making whatever things it is that we need to make for the birthday. For my son's first birthday, I painted a bunch of shelves that she'd bought that she wanted to have on display, because she did this like circus theme for his birthday party. We wanted to have a bunch of things like physical fixtures and stuff that were present at the birthday party, and I made them. She got them, I made them and painted them and stuff and brought them in. So it's not uncommon that we do hobby stuff together, make and build things together, but we don't do this. That's it. Todd from New York City asks, Ash, if you could rework 40K's current point system, what would you do? Simply adjust the current values or tear it down completely. That's an interesting one. I don't really know, because I'm not happy with the current point values in 40K. I think the interesting thing that's happened in 40K is people have been given a lot of freedom, especially with formations and stuff. And they've also been given a lot of combos, and that really appeals to some people. I just watched the Adepticon, I watched people posting stuff about the big Adepticon finals for the first singles 40K tournament. And I think the guy that won, I think his name was Aaron or something like that, he had an army that I just couldn't make any sense of. I looked at his army list. Someone posted a photo of his army list, and it was a bunch of formations. And it basically just added up to a bunch of guys on bikes in a huge Deathwing command squad, all from different armies. So there was like Space Wolves, Blood Angels, regular Space Marines, and they were all fighting together, but it was all kind of so they could just tangle into these super units that then got made invisible that you then couldn't fight. And it didn't look like an army to me. Like, I just didn't really the part of me that goes, cool, it's an army, didn't have any ability to make sense of it until I realized that it was all just individual components being taken to add up into this like super unit. And so, yeah, so that's where it's gone. And the fact that that's now sort of the game, if you're going to look at the game side of it, is what can I get? What can I add together and sort of mechanically make into the best possible combination of units that will murder things? I don't know. It doesn't do anything for me. Like, I wouldn't play the game that way. I can play the game that way. And actually watching it gave me an idea for a series where all I did was build these crazy army lists, and then, like, it'd be like Mythbusters, like challenge people to come and try and destroy them. Which, again, a bunch of people got really excited about as soon as I mentioned it to them. But yeah, we'll see if that happens. The fact is that, like, my brain couldn't actually comprehend what was going on when I first looked at it, because it was so counterintuitive to the way that I would approach making an army. Because the way that I would approach making an army when I first see a codex is I look at all the miniatures from that codex and go, which of these miniatures do I want to paint the most? Cool. How can I buy the most of these miniatures and make an army that I think can probably still win games? And that would be my logic trail to how I would do it. And so I don't think that you can't do that currently in 40K, but creating all these different formations that kind of give you edges and stuff and allow you to combine things from different armies has had the law of unintended consequences that you've opened the floodgate sort of to combinations and things that aren't taken into consideration when you write individual codexes. So what is the best avenue there? Well, I mean, you've opened that door. I'm never a fan of taking things away. Like, I'm never a fan of, hey, we let you do this, and now we're just not going to let you do this anymore. Because that's like admitting it's a mistake. And also you're invalidating people's collections. So, like, this guy's built an army, right, that won Adepticon. I don't feel like it's right just to take away his accomplishment, like to say he can't play with his army anymore and, like, pack up your stuff and go home. That feels wrong to me. But yeah, I don't really know what the answer is from Games Workshop's side. They're obviously, they're obviously going to continue to make it so that you want to buy models. I just don't really know what the how is going to be when it comes to doing that. And I think what you'll probably see is you'll see it's going to stay the same as it is. People are going to get to have their competitive play because it's really popular in 40K. And there'll probably be some organized play organized by GW that's for people that don't play that way. I think that would be cool. I think it would be really cool if some organized play formats got made up by Games Workshop that don't change the rules of the game at all. But what they encourage is what other tournaments at Adepticon do, like the team tournament, where you win by having a great theme, a great story, some really nicely painted miniatures, and how well you do at pairing that up with the theme, the stories, and the beautifully painted miniatures of the other guys that are there playing too. So, like, I think that would be really neat. They did it ages ago. They did a campaign weekend at Warhammer World called Dark Stars, and this is over a decade ago now. And it was like linked games, and it was really neat because it was, what was it? It was, you started the weekend with a 500 point combat patrol, and then you played 200 point combat patrol. So it was a kill team game basically. You had to play a 500 point encounter, and the 500 point army had to be combined arms legal. So it had to be 2 troops in HQ from a combined arms detachment, which back then was just the force organization chart. And then the third game was 1,000 points, which also had to conform to a combined arms detachment of force organization chart. But then the 3 army lists previously had to add together to be a 1,700 point army that was still legal in a combined arms detachment. And they retained all their special rules. So over the course of the weekend, you played 4 games that progressively escalated, but your army had to divide down to these smaller components and still tell a story and be competitive too. So it was really cool because it allowed for some really great sort of like narrative gaming, but it also gave you a challenge. And I think that to a lot of people who like writing army lists and to like the core mechanic of 40K is a great challenge. Is people like trying to take a puzzle and solve it the best possible way. And I think those are the people actually that are the most upset about the way Age of Sigmar went, is that there was an element of problem solving they probably really liked when they were writing army lists that involved points, that was taken away. That's like legitimately gone. You know what I mean? Like you don't get to do that anymore. So that is a hobby in and of itself. And I think that's going to be, it's going to be whatever it is. But if I was to be made the happiest by what comes down in the future, it's that there's more official challenges like that. It's not just bring whatever. It's here's an awesome, fun puzzle. Here's a thing you can take part in. And in doing so, solve this puzzle to the best of your ability by bringing your miniature collection. And let's all, basically tell a story while we do it at the same time. I think that'd be super neat. And if they can figure out with their far smarter than me design team, with their infinite resources, the best way to do that, I will definitely give it shots and give it a try. We're over an hour. Okay, so we're going to take this one. Martin Russell, he asked, hey Ash, what are your aspirations for the business and channel? Do you have a vision for what you want from the GMG and the co-op to be? Basically, when are we going to get a franchise in the UK? I'm a one-man show, dude. That's the thing that I think is, and this is something that I think is hard for a lot of people to understand. I'm not Owen and Mike either. Like, there's a lot of people I think that assume that we are one business. We're just like affiliates that share a space. Like, we're friends basically, and we all share a workspace. And I put the workspace together, so that's what the co-op is. And I run the workspace, but we all just share resources and help each other out. But we're not business affiliate in any way. And so when it comes to GMG, like the co-op is just going to be here as long as I live here, basically, because I need a place to record, and this is a wonderful space, and it's awesome to have awesome people to hang out with and get great work done, and we inspire each other, and we push each other, and we get a lot of really cool things made in the process. I don't think that's going to change. And so obviously a franchise wouldn't make sense, because that's not what a co-op is. A co-op is about a shared resource space, basically, that other people get to use and that you become a community in. We're a little community of people that all have a similar interest in different ways too. I mean, Owen is far more into competitive games and video games than he is into, painting and modeling. Mike is entirely into painting and modeling. And he plays games as a sort of like a reward to himself almost for getting some stuff done, because he takes such pride in what he does. I think he enjoys the spectacle of getting to actually put it on the table and push it around. And me, I'm somewhere in the middle. Like I really enjoy all the aspects of the hobby, and I think they're all worth celebrating. And so I think I'm a good den mother, if you will, in between them. And my aspiration for that is just that we just get to keep doing what we're doing, because we're really enjoying what we do. 10 months in, we're having a great time. And I'm getting to spend my kids' formative years with them, which I didn't think was going to be possible. And as far as the actual Guerrilla Miniature Games channel goes, my biggest aspiration for it is that honestly it keeps helping people. Whether that's being somebody who thinks about things in a similar way to you. So if you're really tired of negativity, of the constant conversation on the internet about miniatures always being about what someone's done wrong, or what someone could do better, and you're just interested in talking about how cool toy soldiers are, then that's what I'm about. And then the same thing goes for creative types. Like if people are being creative and making something, like whether it's a cool measuring widget or a wound dial or terrain or a carrying case or a new way of applying green stuff, it's such a niche market that having someone that also thinks that's cool and is willing to put in a bunch of work to help you try and put your things in front of people it just doesn't exist. And I'm so proud of how many people, how many patrons basically thought that was important, that we're here, right? That this is happening, that we're getting to showcase games that go on to be so successful. Like when This Is Not a Test was first on this channel a year ago, who'd have thought that when Joey basically made the decision, like, I'm going to try and get this game in print. Like, I think it's time to try and do a print book. He asked for $2,000 and he's at like $33,000 right now. And we were a part of that. You know what I mean? The patrons that are part of this, they made that happen too. You know what I mean? Joey's hard work and his product is incredible, but getting out in front of people was so important. And those people that backed us through Patreon and through Indiegogo made that happen. And the same with Frostgrave. And Frostgrave has been so wildly successful. And being able to put it in front of, I think the first Frostgrave video has over 10,000 people have watched it for like a little indie game. That's pretty big. And then combined, I think they've got, all those Frostgrave videos probably have 50 or 60 or 70,000 watches. That has an impact. Like, that helps those people out. And to be able to continue to do that, I think, is my biggest aspiration, because I think there's so much cool stuff out there that might go. I can't say that it succeeded because of what we did, but it certainly didn't hurt that we did it. And so to be able to put more cool stuff like that in front of people, I think is going to be my aspiration for this place, because mainstream games are awesome, and mainstream games are mainstream for a reason. They have a budget to advertise, right? They can go and buy advertising space on Beasts of War or on Cool Mini or whatever. But if you're a guy who just wrote a miniature game and self-published it, like went and got it laid out, he paid for all the art himself. Like, I'm not talking about a Word document somewhere. I'm talking about the guy actually went and made a book and put it up on DriveThruRPG or Lulu or somewhere where it's available for sale. Then you don't really have an advocate. There's nobody speaking for you. But your game could be the next really cool game. And I think that casual gaming, that just cuz kind of gaming, that you don't do for any reason other than the fact that you think it'd be really cool to do it, is what I want this thing to continue to be about. And if that means we get to grow and we find more like-minded people and, the co-op grows, I think that would be awesome. But to do that, to basically be the little indie news radio station for the internet for miniature wargaming, is really my big goal. And that obviously has gone really well so far. We're at the point now where we're still here, and I didn't know if that was going to be the case after the Indiegogo campaign, if we would still be able to, if we would even if we bring in a single dollar, basically. But our audience is growing, and we're at a point now where people reach out to us, and I think that's crazy. Like, we're having people reach out and say, hey, can you help us get this in front of more people? We think it's really cool, and I don't think enough people have seen it. And for the most part, we say yes. Sometimes we say no. Like, I've actually said no a few times now because it wasn't the right time. A lot to do with what we talked about earlier with crowdfunding. If something's not done, if it's not ready, right? Like, it's not something that we can really safely, I think, promote and have you guys trust us while we watch you, or while you watch us, because if we say that it's cool, it has to physically be finished. It has to be in front of us. I'm not gonna say something's cool. Like, this isn't Gamergate, you know what I mean? Unless I get to physically see something, like, and it is cool, I'm not gonna say it's cool. Like, I can't be bought, I guess is what I'm saying. It has to actually be something that I think is cool for me to want to say yes. And that's meant that at this point we've had to say no sometimes. Not because the thing might not be cool, but because it might not be yet. It might be an idea and not be finished. And of course, there's just the fact there's only so much time in the day. And so there has to kind of be some lines drawn as far as what constitutes like an indie game and what's a major company making something, but just wants to get it in front of more people. Because it's not advertising so much as it's getting something noticed, you know what I mean, they might not have seen before. So there's my answer. I don't really know what kind of answer that is, but I would like to keep doing this for a long time. Forever, if possible. I think that'd be super cool. I don't know if it's going to be exactly the same as it is now forever, because things are always evolving, and I think that's the nature of this industry and what I'm doing, that it's evolving. But I think that the thing that will stay consistent is that Guerrilla Miniature Games is going to try and always bring you stuff that you haven't seen before, or that deserves a little more recognition than it's getting right now, or that is just cool for the sake of being cool. Like, it's not cool because it's industry cool. It's cool because it's somebody's passion. You know what I mean? And it's worth seeing for that reason. So there it is. I got through Baby Kate. I got through Teddy. I'm a bit way through Widow Weaver. I'm going to finish him up. But that'll be me here a little more late tonight, I guess, than I thought I was going to be. Thanks for watching, guys. If you want to get in your question for next week, you can just click the link below and go into, SurveyMonkey and ask me a question. I'll see you guys again for another piece of Ash we're in April? May. So let's see you in May. Until then, thanks for watching. I'm Ash. Bye.